Hello, my name is Kris Nelson of evolveconsciousness.org, and I'm doing a presentation for S.E.E.D 5 Metamorphosis, September 23rd to 24th, 2023, at seedtruth.com. My presentation is titled Empowering Change, Understanding and Harnessing the Power of Consciousness. So let's get into it. First, I'll talk about, there's a little table of contents of what we're going to get into. We have change, learned helplessness, disempowerment, empowerment, the Phoenix alchemical symbolism, the highest alchemy, past and future actions, the eye of providence, apathy, and care for truth. Change. Change what? What needs to change? Is everything just fine and dandy the way things are now? Or is there something that does need to change, that should be changed? Can improvements be made somewhere? Are there mistakes to correct? Are there problems to fix? Something in the world, something in others, maybe something in you? Maybe you don't see anything that needs to change. It's understandable not to see something when you aren't looking. If you start to look and you become more aware of the condition of the world and yourself, then you will see that there are things to improve, that there are problems to fix. Can you change what you can't see or don't want to see? That's one of the major impediments to even beginning the process of change, is that if you can't see that there's anything that needs to change, and if you do see that there are things that need to change, but you don't want to change, or that you don't even want to look for things that are possible to change, then obviously no change is going to happen. So this was just an introduction to get people to question themselves about whether there actually are things that need to change, and obviously there are once you become more aware of the condition of the world. But for those who haven't arrived at that impetus and drive and motivation to try to do something about it, these are questions to ask. If you're not looking, then obviously you're not going to find. So maybe you need to start to look, and then you'll see, are there things to change in the world? And then you'll try to find fault in others, that it's blaming the politicians or whatever is outside. And then eventually you realize that there's a lot of things in yourself that need to change to begin that process. And this is all about getting to the eventual position of correcting mistakes and wrongs in the world, in others, but it starts with ourselves. So why don't things truly change for the better in our lives or in the world? Most people don't learn from their mistakes and keep repeating them. They aren't even aware they're making mistakes or doing wrongs. You have to be aware of a mistake or wrong in order to correct or right it. When most people lack an accurate understanding of a current condition in reality and how they possibly contribute to making it that way, then it's going to continue. In denial and escapism of looking at the uncomfortable wrongs in existence and how one could be contributing to them, individuals focus their time and attention on other things: work, success, fun, enjoying life, entertainment, etc. And the little meme on the left is, what if they were filling your head with useless sports stats, celebrity gossip, and flavor of the week fashion to distract you from discovering the fraud, corruption, and theft that actually impacts your life every day? What if? Imagine that that's what's actually going on, and that is what's going on. Correcting mistakes and wrongs. As long as life is decent for you, then it's all good. Things are just as they're supposed to be, right? Just focus on the positive in your own life because there's nothing you can do to change the world, so don't even try. That's the lie people tell themselves so that they don't even try to learn how it's possible to change things, let alone actually do the work necessary to achieve the ends they say they want, such as the ends of goodness. They want to see good in the world, or they want freedom in the world, or any other positive ends that they're looking for. Meanwhile, they ignore the problem of entrenched societal evil and enslavement. Most people support and contribute to that immoral condition. Living in a better world is but a dream to most people who have learned to be helpless. And the memes on the left say, quote from Confucius, a man who has committed a mistake and doesn't correct it is committing another mistake. So if you keep making mistakes, then that itself, by not correcting your previous mistake, is another mistake. So it compounds and compounds. And just below that, get a job, go to work, get married, have children, follow fashion, act normal, walk on the pavement, watch TV, obey the law, save for your old age. Now repeat after me, I am free. And that's the delusion of what we have right now is people believe they're free. They're told they're free, so they just believe it. Learned helplessness. No change possible mindset. That's what learned helplessness is. Learned helplessness is learning to be helpless, learning to accept a negative outcome and not do anything to change it. You quote learn that you don't have any control over over the cause of the negative effect, that there's nothing you can possibly do to change it, so you let it continue. It's inevitable that the negative condition exists and continues to exist. You have no power to make it otherwise. So don't even try. It's pointless. You will just fail again and again. Changing the condition is impossible. It's not the learning of a truth, though. It's accepting a falsity as truth. Like, quote, learning that 2 plus 2 is 5 and resigning yourself to that unreality as reality. That's what learned helplessness is, learning things that aren't true about yourself or about the world, or I guess seeing the condition of the world but thinking that you can't possibly do anything, which isn't the case. And so you put yourself in a position of not doing anything. That's what the images on the left show, or there's a wall in front of you, but all you have to do is walk beside it. And you're like, oh my God, I can't pass. I can't get to that light at the end of the road. I'm stuck here. And this has been done in animal studies with dogs. And here's the example of an elephant who's tied to a peg, or they entrain it at a young age to be tied to something that they can't move at a young age, and they learn to associate the rope with being stuck there. So all they have to do when they're older is tie the animal to just some little peg that they could just move their leg in a decent amount of force and just uproot that peg and walk away. But they've learned to be helpless. And this is eternal helplessness brings us into a mindset of an eternal hell, negative thinking. Resigning yourself to thinking that the condition is eternally this way is a dark and false worldview, as if it's written in stone that it's always been this way and neither you or anyone else can change it. This is the mindset of being eternally tortured in hell that you can't escape from because you deserve it. It's also the eternal child syndrome or mindset because you avoid, deny, ignore, and reject the personal responsibility to even try to comprehend how to get out and work to change the condition. That's a self loathing mindset where you aren't worth the effort or time to even try. It's also accepting to be a slave rather than a free willed being who works to change the condition. This is a little chart I made about this condition of disempowerment that people need to break out of in order to gain that position of empowerment to empower change. So what's missing in you, starting from the bottom, you have what's missing is the personal responsibility, and the phase that's absent is the responsibility to do something with the knowledge. And then the state of being that you're in is a state of fear. And we go up from there. The care for truth is what's missing in you. And the phase that's absent is to care to see if things need to change. And the state of being that you're in is you have an apathy to seek truth or to learn. Up from there, what's missing in you is knowledge. And The next step is missing, that is knowledge, since you lack the previous steps. And the phase that's absent is knowing what to change. And your state of being is ignorance. And following from that, what's missing in you is understanding. And the phase that's absent is why and how to change. And then your state of being is in a state of being of misunderstanding, confusion, and being fooled. And then finally, the final step that's missing in you is more care and having the willpower and wisdom to act. And that's the phase absent, is the act to actually change things. And then your state of being is being lazy, cowardly, and an apathy to act, and being foolish. Learning to change. If we're not doing what needs to be done to correct a condition, then we're likely ignorant and need to learn more in order to develop the motivational power, the care, to engage in the change that is required. Most people aren't motivated to want to learn about the darkness or negative in the world or in themselves. They lack real care for truth, yet they hope to do what's right in a state of ignorance. What, how do we change to be more correct than incorrect overall? Learning is required. Then the understanding of the knowledge gained is fuel to generate more care as more fuel that can move us to change, to act. Truth fuels it all. Truth is the foundation for higher, realer, and truer living. So the empowering change is, I've made it into 8 steps that involve the trivium method for those familiar with it. First, as you face reality, you have to care to look at the current condition. Then you're empowered by looking. You're empowered by seeing the truth of the negative current condition. So you're obviously gaining some knowledge of some awareness of the current state of things. Next, you have care and will to change the condition. Then you take in more knowledge about the condition. That's the what, the who, what, where, and when. Then you develop understanding from processing that information and finding root causes. That's understanding why it's that way. Then you're empowered by understanding those root causes. Then you can care to enact courage and willpower and the wisdom of right action. That's engaging in the how to change things. Then finally, you're empowered by your actions, changing reality. So first, you face reality, you care to look at and see the condition as it is. You acknowledge reality. It's not all rose-colored glasses and all good. There is a veil of false appearances covering the darkness beneath. Much time is spent on getting by, on surviving. In the space between that grind, we want to focus on things that are comfortable, pleasurable, enjoyable, fun. So we ignore the negative. Facing the problems in the world and ourselves isn't something comfortable to do. It's easier for us to keep doing what is comfortable and remain attached to it. Facing the negative creates discomfort, insecurity, and a sense of anxiety, which takes us away from the desired comfort, security, and sense of well-being of that ignorance. So when we face reality, we need to break the false perception of reality. Have the care and courage to look and see the darkness, negative, demon, shadow, and wrongs in the world being ignored. Also look into the mirror to see the darkness ignored within that reflects outward to contribute to creating the current negative conditions in the world. See the uncomfortable, undesirable, painful truth as it is. Don't avoid, ignore, deny, reject, or deflect the current condition. Realize and recognize reality in its current condition. Face both the reality of the positive and the negative, the light and the dark, the beauty and the horror, the good and the evil, the moral and the immoral. Removing falsity pierces the veiled reality. Move from ignorance to knowledge. This is an infographic I've made maybe nearly 10 years ago. At this point, 9 years ago. And I called it Alchemical Divorce, Part 1, which was based on what I just described. So you have divorce, apophysis, negation, deconstruction of the false perceptual reality. So the worldview, the self-concept, the self-image, the delusion, the false percepts, those have to be pierced through. We have to remove the falsity, and that pierces into an into an aspect of veiled reality, the darkness beneath it. We think things are all rosy-colored glasses, things are all good, but when we start to correct our false perceptions, that's when we see what's hidden beneath, what is denied and veiled, the obfuscated reality, the hell to face. We don't just get to the light by thinking we already have it. We have to first face the darkness. We have to break the false perceptions of reality to face the shadow demon darkness, negative and evil. If we want to actually live in true freedom and peace, then we have to destroy the false perceptions we have of ourselves and reality to face the current darkness and shadow. We must fall before we can rise, burn before we are reborn. An information catalyst that provokes disturbance and puts pressure on our false conceptions can bring us to shatter these lies, to shake the false perceptions of reality, to poke holes through the veil. That's why sometimes we have to suffer, and that's what acts as a catalyst to awaken us to the reality that we were ignoring. Then we can become empowered with that realization, be enlivened by truth. Truth shines a light on the negative, causing the darkness of ignorance to retract, exposing what was occulted and renders it visible. Knowing the current condition expands awareness and consciousness. Accept things and do nothing, or accept the responsibility to change it. That's ultimately the real dichotomy that we have to do. That we see things as they are and accept them and do nothing about them, or accept that they are that way and also accept the responsibility to change it. Truth has been acquired, which enlivens consciousness and awareness and the potential to act. Feel the empowerment to do something about the undesirable condition now that the current reality has been faced and is known. The truth about reality will enliven your state of being, your core, your essence, igniting the spark of care into a flame that powers the generation of future behavior. Care and will, very important to enact. There is need to learn how to effectively change the condition. More care and willpower are required to engage in deeper learning about the current condition of reality. Knowledge and understanding is needed to do the right change and not the wrong or ineffective change. Otherwise, that means more mistakes. And just as the Confucius quote was saying, if you make a mistake and you don't correct it, you're making another mistake. We have to take the time to learn properly in order to avoid making more mistakes. Caring to do that is required to get that result. At this stage, you can feel the flame burning within. It's time to collect some knowledge as fuel and ignite your potential to change the conditions in your life and possibly the world. Because that's where it starts. It always starts with ourselves. If we want to change the world, we have to change ourselves. And when we face reality, we become empowered by that, and then that empowerment can of seeing reality as it is can fuel further our care and our will to then will ourselves to learn more about that condition and understand it more deeply. And this is a good meme from The Lorax by Dr. Seuss, I believe. Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. Care is crucial. You can see the reality as it is, but if you don't care to do anything about it, to motivate you, to learn more about it, to understand it, then nothing is going to change. It all starts with the individual and progresses outward. As millions of individuals embark on this process, then things can change for the better in a true, positive, actual, lasting direction. So now we need to get more knowledge, collect more information about the situation, learn more about the condition in order to better understand the core foundational root causal factors that created it, proper change of the condition. problem, or issue requires dealing with the root, with the actual cause of the effects. What is happening? Learn about the basics of the condition, problem, or issue. What, who, when, where. This is the basic knowledge that needs to be gathered, collected, and input into consciousness. This is also the grammar phase in the trivium method, or grammar input knowledge, depending on whether you're using the classical trivium or the modern or the esoteric. And this is an infographic I've made years ago, just a basic demonstration of the trivium method and its progression from the knowledge to an understanding to then wisdom, where we act on it. And the knowledge is your stimulus, what we consume, and the who, what, where, when. And then with logic, we process and understand it better to understand the why that's there. And this requires curiosity, doubt, and questioning things. And then we can respond. We can engage in a response and generate into the outer world. This is the phase of rhetoric, output, and wisdom. So understand causes. Process knowledge to identify root causes. Processing information provides higher definition clarity about the subject of inquiry. Understand the meaning, purpose, and value of knowledge to empower effective action to change the condition. Why did the condition happen? Filter, discern, judge, and analyze the knowledge to validate it. Correspond and integrate the knowledge without contradictions or errors in thinking. Arrive at truth as a foundation for making decisions. Get to the root causal source of the issue to understand the reason for the subsequent manifested effects. Acting on improperly analyzed effects are band-aids that don't actually heal the wound. So that means when you're not going to properly analyze the condition and gain knowledge and then try to understand why it's that way, if you're having a superficial understanding or a false understanding and you're going to act on that improper analysis, that improper understanding, or halfway understanding, half-assed understanding, then you're likely just going to be applying a band-aid in whatever course of action that you take, because you're not actually targeting the root cause, the true root cause. You're just targeting possibly some other effect, some other manifestation that doesn't deal with the issue actually. And the infographics I have was for the understanding and the piecing of knowledge. You can have a bunch of information. That's what the head with like the green, I guess, matrix code or whatever. And when you process all that information, you're going to find meaning in it. You're going to collate it, coalesce it, and organize it. And then you'll see that it's a picture of a person's head, and it's not just a bunch of random characters. And on the bottom, this is the illusion of, well, this is the information coming in. Well, the information is just, there's a bunch of lines, but what meaning do you convey? What meaning is conveyed by that information? And in this case, well, there's two. There's a vase in the middle, or there's two faces facing each other. And that's the meaning that can be conveyed with this information of these white lines drawn on a black background. Well, it conveys additional information that requires processing and understanding. So after we gain more understanding, we're empowered. Again, instead of level 1, this is level 2. We're enlivened by the root causal truth, rather than just enlivened by truth of the current condition as it is, seeing it as it is. Now we're enlivened by the root cause, a deeper truth of understanding the root cause of why that condition is there. The solution to change the root cause is understood from seeing the problem clearly, from gaining clarity. The light of truth has further optimized your vision of the condition. Now you're really empowered to do something by applying knowledge as the wisdom of right action. You learned about the problem, got down to the root causal source of it, and now you understand what you need to do to target the problem effectively. Feel that truth flowing through you and giving you the motivation and energy to change. The light of truth further feeds the flame and fire of care within and ignites you to act. So this is a crucial part of the empowerment of not only, first you face reality as it is, and you get enlivened by that, by being shaken, which was my case and many other people's cases, as a catalyst to develop further care. You're empowered by seeing reality as it is. Your blinders are removed. The veil has been uncovered. Reality is shattered, and now you see things as they are. And it is horrible, and it can be depressing. But rather than see it that way, you need to see it as an empowerment. Now you're actually seeing reality more as it is, and that can bring you to take things further in your understanding of, okay, it is this way. Well, what can be done about it? And then you learn about that. You gain more knowledge, you gain an understanding. Now you know why it's that way. So you're further empowered, and it further ignites that care to act and eventually do something about it. That's empowering you to change. This brings us to the wisdom of right action. We enact courage and will to act rightly. And obviously the care is an important factor to bring us to this position, to this state of being. We actualize, realize, and generate the wisdom of right action. How are you going to make things change? Take action that targets the cause of the undesirable effect that exists. Apply the empowerment of truth and the ignited care into willpower as a form of action. This is the third phase of the trivium method, where power comes from applying the knowledge and understanding gained. Now you're activated and doing something to make change happen. Now you're a change agent. Even if the action isn't the most effective targeting of root causes, you can learn from the mistake, refine your understanding, and do better. And by this I mean you learn from the mistake of not actually targeting the proper root cause. So even if you gain a half-assed understanding and you try something where you can see that, oh, that it's, or you can run a thought experiment, you can see, oh, well, that's not actually going to change anything. It's going to change things in a minor way, maybe like rearranging the chairs on a sinking ship like the Titanic, but you're not actually going to take care of the problem at a true causal level. And this brings us to being empowered at the final level, where you see the results manifest. Once you get to that root causal effect and you're targeting that, you might not see them right away, as is the case in complex situations that involve many people. You're not the god of reality. You can't just change things about reality on a whim. It takes a group of people. Sometimes when that's the collective condition of the world, well, it takes a collective effort. But in your personal life, when it's individual problems, yeah, you can change it, and you can see results manifest in your individual life, and you can apply this process to see that happen. So you reap what you sowed, be it positive or negative. Maybe there is more to do, as we are always learning, which can change our behavior and the future outcomes. We learn from our mistakes. That is life, to learn. If you stop learning, then you stop taking advantage of the power of consciousness, and that potential for bettering the world or yourself goes to waste. With persistence, you eventually get a positive accomplishment, and that's empowering. That is the power we have as creators. We can continually make things and even remake ourselves like a phoenix is reborn from the ashes. We are malleable, highly adaptable, and can change and evolve to greater heights. We can become more than what we are in the present. And this was the another infographic I made about the second part of the alchemical divorce, to emphasize the the removal of that false reality that currently exists in order to change it and make things actually better. So this is the divorce, apophysis, negation, deconstruction of the false self, the shadow, the darkness, demon, and negative, instead of the false worldview and the false perception of reality that we're deconstructing and destroying and divorcing ourselves from. Now we're trying to divorce and deconstruct the false world or the false self and make things better. So we're removing false ways of living that actualize more unification with truth. We're facing the reality of the shadow, darkness, demon, negative, and evil parts of ourselves in the world. And that brings us to the potential reality we can create, the heaven to create, the way, true freedom and peace that we can create by removing that falsity in the world. We're facing the darkness of reality. Facing the shadow and darkness will allow us to actually reach the light and create with it. It is a weeding out of the garden in order to allow fruitful manifestations to be created, grow, and prosper. Continually facing the darkness in us allows us to sublimate the shadow and build ourselves and the world in alignment with truth. It is a vitriolic, deconstructive, dissolving, disassembling process that takes time, energy, effort, dedication, determination, persistence, true care, courage, and will to realize and actualize more right ways of living. Once the shadow is faced and acknowledged, we can then begin to deconstruct, dissolve, sublimate, transmute, shatter, etc., those aspects that do not serve us, aspects in ourselves and aspects that we all collectively co-create in the world. We alchemically burn to rise from our ashes, go to greener pastures, better than before. And this is obviously talking about the alchemical symbol of the phoenix, where the phoenix is an alchemical symbol of change towards the positive higher potential we can become relative to where we are. It bursts into flames, dies, and disintegrates into a pile of ashes to be reborn, rising from the ashes into a new life. This cycle repeats as necessary. We can continually engage in this process of self-renewal. The fire disintegrates the self in order to put to death, destroy, shatter, transmute, or sublimate the shadow, darkness, demon, wrong, evil, or immorality within us. A part of our former self dies by putting to death the falsity we held onto within us. Then we can be reborn again, resurrected into the quote afterlife from our former life, from the falser way of living and being. We rise from the dead as a stronger and better version of ourselves. And this is from Harry Potter. It's a GIF of like two scenes put together where it shows this process of the phoenix bursts into flames, disintegrates into a pile of ashes, and from the ashes it's reborn anew, remade anew into a new life, resurrected. Maybe I can show that in full screen. Yeah, it's pretty good symbolism, and this was like, it's the best visual that encapsulates the whole process from the burning into the new state of being. And the highest form of this process, the highest alchemy, is moral actualization, moral individuation, moral self-realization, moral self-actualization. The highest form of spiritual alchemy, self-improvement, that an individual can do is to change or transform into a more moral being, evolve consciousness towards being a truer, realer, and higher version of self in greater degrees of alignment with morality, that is to say, in greater degrees of alignment with moral truth, moral law, or natural law. This requires introspection and self-reflection to honestly look into the mirror and to see how you are currently a falser, unrealer, and lower version of the higher potential self that you can become. Align with natural law, the NAP and SDP, which is the non-aggression principle and the self-defense principle. Then teach natural law to influence change as a magician. That's how to self-actualize moral law and help others do the same, thereby changing the world. And that's what the two tarot cards are. Tarot 11 for justice and 1 for the magician. Is the goal is to reach that top position of being a magician where you influence others to change by first yourself transforming and becoming self-actualized in alignment with justice, natural law, the goals of true freedom, of true order. And that's the symbolism of the justice card with the sword of truth and the scales of justice of weighing things and determining what is right from what is wrong and choosing the right over the wrong. And as you saw the two pillars in the justice card, well, that is the two pillars of enlightenment, of the self-defense principle and the non-aggression principle. So on the right side is the non-aggression principle, and this is the sacred feminine qualities that we can embody within us, where we choose the right over the wrong. This is the path of non-violence, of not initiating harm. It's of choosing the least harm we can do because we can do it. Not that some pursuit is of no harm whatsoever, if that's even possible. That's another topic to talk about, but when you pursue something of trying to do the least harm because you can do something in a different way. And people don't want to recognize this about the plant-based living, non-carnism, but that's what it's about. It's not about doing no harm and all the objections people can bring up about, oh well, you're using gas, or you're in the farms and the monocrop there, whatever, there's insects that are going to be milled, or there's mice, or whatever the argument is. It's about trying to do the least harm you can because you can do things differently. And maybe it's harder than doing it the other way. Maybe stopping to be an order follower is harder than not being an order follower. But by choosing to do that path, you're engaging in less harm. Not that you're doing no harm in your life whatsoever, but it's trying to improve and get towards that goal of living a better way by doing the least harm. That's the goal of aligning more and more with the non-aggression principle, the sacred feminine aspect of natural law, moral truth, morality. So the goal is to not initiate harm, and there's degrees that we can pursue that towards other sentient beings. And we don't violate rights. We don't violate the rights of others. And we don't do or support evil, such as being an order follower or helping government perpetuate its control over everyone in society. And that's saying no to evil. That's using the lost word, no. Conversely, on the left side, that's the, maybe not conversely, but in unison with the non-aggression principle on the right side, the sacred feminine, we have the self-defense principle, the sacred masculine on the left pillar. And that's where you defend yourself and you act and stand up, where you speak the truth And that's part of self-defense, is speaking the truth, the intellectual self-defense. It doesn't have to be physical in terms of with your arms in defending a violation of rights. One of the important parts is to speak the truth about the negative condition, and especially to speak the truth about educating others about moral truth and moral law and natural law, so that they can empower themselves to empowering change in their lives, and together things can actually change for the better at a larger scale. Now, part of that obviously is speaking the truth, where we respond to harm, the harm that we can be doing. We need to stop that. That's the sacred feminine, but also the harm going on in the world. That's where we engage in that defense of speaking truth. We respond to the harm by exposing the harm that's going on and speaking about the negative. We defend rights. The we speak about the violation of rights in order to promote the defense of the rights, or we can actually defend rights by engaging in the physical self-defense to stop others who are actually violating others, and that's dealing with violence, where we deal with the violence that other people are actually doing, whatever degree it may be, whether that's countering deceptions or lies, or attempting to steal someone's wallet, or to murder someone, etc. And that's where we enact justice, and we become agents of enacting justice. And that doesn't belong to any centralized authority. That's everyone's right to engage in. And this is engaging in, when you get to the point of physical defense of other people's rights, not just the speaking of truth, the physical aspect of using our mouths to speak the truth into existence, but to use our hands and our arms with physical force applied against the undue use of violent force. That's the last word. So we can avoid doing that on a large scale, as has been done many times in the past, by engaging in the lost word, by saying no to evil and doing the first part of the sacred masculine, which is to engage in that defense, to act and stand up and speak truth, to speak truth into existence in order to get people to change in their consciousness, engaging in that higher alchemy themselves, as we've done ourselves. And then we engage in that magician quality of influencing others to change as a magician, where we are the ones using our words and educating others and influencing their minds. That's magic. That's the word symbol magic, because we're not actually doing anything purely physical. We are using the physicality of our voice, but we are we're influencing others to change. And as more and more people do this, then we won't have to engage in the last word at a very large scale to try to combat the immorality of our current condition. We have the potential to do it by saying no ourselves and stopping to engage in it, and then influence others to align with justice and natural law, moral law. And what is moral and immoral? Well, basic morality is best understood apophatically by what you don't have a right to do. Basic moral behavior, a right, is what does not initiate harm to another sentient being. Initiating harm is a theft of property, a violation of a right, which is wrong, immoral, and evil. The consciousness of a body wills its own body self to move, such as to mix labor with natural resources. Other property rights are derived from the self-ownership of having life, of having a body and a psyche, of existing as a body and a psyche, that as a body and a consciousness that has will and moves this body, that animates it into the world and can interact with it in and such as using the non-consciousness, non-will material of the natural world, the natural resources, and we mix our labor as a body that is willed by consciousness, and then we acquire property. The 7 primary acts of immorality wrongs are thefts of types of property. Murder is the theft of life, rape the theft of sexual association, assault is the theft of bodily integrity, coercion and duress is the theft of free will choice, standard theft is the theft of property, trespass is the theft of the security of your living domain, and willful lying, deception, or fraud is the theft of the ability to make informed decisions. And this brings us, so the point of this slide about the past and future vision is the Greek words syneidesis and synderesis, which have to do with the conscience of the past and the future. As taking knowledge from the past as a guide to watch over the future, to not repeat mistakes, to create better. Because that's what we're trying to do, right? The second, third slide was about correcting mistakes, correcting our wrongs. Well, that's where the syneidesis is. The conscience as passing judgment on past acts, either ourselves, learning from our individual mistakes, or even wiser is not having to do the mistake yourself, but learning from others who have done the mistakes, or reading about them and learning from the knowledge of others so that we don't have to engage in those wrongs in order to learn that they are wrong. And syneidesis comes from sin, with, together, and eidene, to know, so it's to know together. This is what conscience, the word for conscience in Greek. And the corollary to that is synderesis or synteresis, conscience as a guide to future actions. So we use our conscience as passing judgment on past acts in order to guide us in our future action. And that's sin, with, and terrain, to watch over or to keep guard. So we're judging knowledge, eidene, of the consequences of past actions, and that develops conscience. Exercising conscience is watching over what will come to be to guide future actions. The past knowledge guides us into the future. We live in the present with memories or history of the past and predict the future we aim to create with our actions. Learn from past mistakes to not repeat them. Create a better future. He who controls the past controls the future. He who controls the present controls the past. Quote from George Orwell, 1984. Great book. And that's how we can help regain that control from the party, from the authoritarians, from the government who seeks to control in order to keep their control. We can take back our control. So the eye of providence is symbolism you can see as the greater capital G God, but it's also symbolism for us as smaller creators of our human world. The all-seeing eye, the one eye, well, that's something that we can embody within us. Providence means foresight, prudent anticipation, foreknowledge, precaution, to guard against beforehand. So you can see how that ties into the previous slide of synderesis, of being a guard for our future actions. So it comes from provide, provision, from pro, ahead, and videre, to see ahead. We look ahead, we prepare, supply, act with foresight. Providence, fate, fortune, and destiny is about the future. We can predict behavior and consequences based on pattern recognition of causal relations to foresee what will happen. We are our prediction engines. Our consciousness can predict the future. Even other mammals and other types of animals can do this too. They can predict the future that will come. They can anticipate. They can respond to things before it happens because they engage in pattern recognition and see and learn from it in order to understand that the pattern repeats. Just like when in the Minority Report movie, when he throws the ball off the table and the guy catches it, well, you could predict that someone will catch it because that's our natural inclination, is to catch things that will fall. Or When you see a glass falling, if you hit a glass off the corner of the table, you can catch it before it breaks because you can predict the future path. Or when we play frisbee, dogs can do that too. They can predict the trajectory and they can catch objects. So I just wanted to mention that about the consciousness and how we can engage in pattern recognition of causal relations to foresee what will happen and predict the future. We watch over the future with knowledge of the past. We guard and protect ourselves with knowledge of the past to determine what future and action can create, allowing us to change the future with foresight. And that's the eye of providence. It's the capacity of our consciousness uncovering reality to recognize patterns of causality, to make sense of what came before and see what will and can come next. The eye of providence is illumination from acquiring the light of moral truth, the vision of wisdom, the apotheosis power of becoming like a quote small g God, a creator in our own rights, to morally create our own fate, destiny, and future. Things aren't written in stone. This is the symbolism when it applies to ourselves, the light emitting. The light is symbolic of knowledge and truth. And we see that with our eye, with our inner vision in our consciousness. And we develop, we can evolve consciousness by gaining knowledge and quality knowledge, important things, seeing causal relations, and especially applying it in relation to moral truth and aligning ourselves with it in order to guide our future actions so that we can create a better world and be in charge of our fate and destiny and the fortune we make. If we do it collectively, if enough people do this, then we can remake the world and make it a much better place to live in. That's truly empowering change to engage in that behavior. So similar to the alchemical divorce and the phoenix symbolism, well, this talks more about this negative, disempowering position that a lot of people are in, where the majority of people are in, especially relative to the highest alchemy of moral self-actualization. And that's where people are the dead, because they're in a state of apathy for truth. And this is symbolic of being unconscious, dead, asleep, unawakened, uninitiated, or unbegun. Being asleep or dead is being unconscious, inactive in life. Apathy to truth relates to not being consciously aware of the importance of caring for truth and acting in alignment with truth, especially moral truth. One is dead in the coffin, grave, or tomb, unconscious to moral truth and its importance in life, its supreme importance. Not using intelligence, care, courage, and willpower equates to deadened thoughts, emotions, and actions. Apathy for truth creates ignorance, cowardice, and laziness. Apathy kills care. Ignorance kills intelligence. Cowardice kills courage. And laziness kills willpower, leading to an absence of right action, being inactive and dead. Quote, dead. We're not actually dead, we're alive and living, but in terms of consciousness, and that's what the dark occult refer to people because they're not using their capacities of consciousness to engage in that small g creative power, the self-actualization, using the eye of providence to foresee how to take charge in their fate, their destiny, and their fortune, and create a better world. And the dark occultists use it for negative ends to create the world that they want to see, a world where they're in control, where they create a prison and they're the wardens and the prison guards ruling over all the slaves that do all the work and all the labor in order to provide them with the comforts that they enjoy because they have the control. And that's what the symbolism here is of from Freemasonry or Jesus. You can see how they correlate of being dead in a tomb, and that's the story of Hiram Abiff, the deadened aspects of consciousness. We can awaken and resurrect true care, and that's what this symbolism is about, where you rise from the coffin. That's what the deeper esoteric deeper layer of esoteric meaning in the story of Jesus is to be resurrected, where you're dead and then you resurrect into a new life, into an afterlife. The quote dead symbolism is used to express, well, there's a typo, sorry about that, to express the understanding of unrealized and unactualized potential to care for, seek and embrace and embody and live aligned to moral truth, the way and path, as a truer, realer, higher version of ourselves. And once again, the allegory of Jesus was he was the way, he was the path, and that's the path of moral truth. That's what the story was trying to exemplify and symbolize, allegorize, analogize, and metaphor and parables. When we choose to care for truth, and specifically moral truth, we develop a higher consciousness. We become initiated, awake, and aware, where we are resurrected, risen, rebirthed, reborn, and raised from a deadened, lower state of consciousness. We rise to a higher, truer, and realer consciousness or life, and are now alive, born into a new life, a new world, an afterlife, or eternal life, or immortal life, a heaven. These are the potentials we can create. And all of this, we're reborn into an afterlife, eternal life, immortal life, heaven, that is given to us by the light or life of moral truth, the divine word, the logos, the good, or the God in our lives. And that's the symbolism of Jesus. Once again, the parable, the allegory, the metaphor is Jesus was the way, the path. Jesus was the light and the life. That's why there's that reading of Matthew, I think, I forget what it was, but about him being a sword and dividing parents against their children, children against their siblings and their parents. And whoever follows Jesus will find their life, and whoever chooses their life over the moral truth will lose it, because you're not going into this new life, you're not being reborn into a greater state of being, into a higher, truer, and realer consciousness or life. And this ties back to a lot of symbolism in ancient Egypt, the regeneration of life through death. That's what this symbolism is talking about. And we get to the Egyptian, quote, god of the underworld is Osiris. Osiris is the Lord of life. Once again, the Lord of life, just like you could say the Jesus symbolism represents. The eternal life. The black-green symbolism that some, quote, gods have, like Osiris, represents creation, generation, regeneration, rebirth, and resurrection. The underworld is where the dead are resurrected into an afterlife or paradise in the eastern land of the reeds. It's where we face our demons, shadow, darkness, and use the light of truth to battle these dark forces and put them to death. Then we gain life, are resurrected and rebirthed, regenerated and recreated anew, and reach an afterlife heaven of a new world as a truer, realer, higher being. That's also part of the symbolism and allegory of the hero's journey in mythology that Joseph Campbell talks about. Entry into the afterlife by Osiris required passing through the Hall of Judgment, the Hall of Ma'at, the Hall of Two Truths, where the dead are judged by their actions or desires, which motivates their behavior, weighed against the feather of truth or the feather of Ma'at. And that's what the depictions here are, is in the Hall of the Duat, the Hall of Ma'at, with Osiris, which would grant them passageway into the afterlife, the eternal life, by judging their actions or their desires that motivated their actions or behavior, to see if they were in alignment with morality, because that's what Ma'at represented, was the moral truth. And if you did, well, then that's how you are reborn, is you judge yourself, your past deeds, and you are reborn as a new person, relative to your former, falser, unrealer, lower self into a truer, higher, realer version of yourself. You remake yourself as a phoenix, continually remake yourself in alignment with moral truth, and that's the highest alchemy. And this is the journey to the underworld. Facing the darkness in ourselves, we develop the care, courage, and willpower to conquer, destroy, and put to death parts of ourselves in order to be reborn in an afterlife of our former life better than before. These stories are allegories symbolizing deeper esoteric occulted knowledge about ourselves. The literal interpretations are exoteric veils of fantastical stories often used to control. And that's how I see, that's my belief, my interpretation of how these ancient traditions, which I think, in my view, came prior to them being inscribed in these monuments, in these hieroglyphics, tens of thousands of years ago, maybe from Atlantis or whatever. The knowledge got passed down after the cataclysm, and then it was retained, and some people codified it in symbolism and allegory, but then it was used by rulers, the pharaohs, who wanted to convince people that, well, they are the pathway, that you had to listen to them, that they were the law, that they were the order, and this is how you attain the afterlife. But the deeper esoteric symbolism that was encoded is about this process of moral self-actualization, of becoming a higher, truer, realer, better version of ourselves, that we can remake reality as well. And I'm just going to go through, since my time is up, I'm just going to go through. I had some extra things that I could have talked about if I still had time. This is work that you can find on my site, Apathy for Truth process in consciousness. You can go to my site, evolveconsciousness.org, to find more about that. I have one for the Care for Truth, symbolism and infographics. I have on the seed of life and more on the trivium and consciousness. I also have this one on the natural moral law, alchemical distillation, the process of consciousness, and the trivium. And I've explained that in presentations, in a presentation before that you can look at. And in the end, this is about moral law empowerment, the empowering change. The apathy for truth keeps one in a stagnant state of ignorance of moral law, going in circles, continuing to perpetuate self-inflicted suffering, where we're in a hamster wheel. We have the same mindset, same thoughts, same actions, same results. We're stuck, we're trapped in a problem condition that we're not getting out of, and it just keeps going around and around and around, and that's what we keep getting. Versus we care and drive for truth leads to generating in principles of moral truth, leading to true freedom eventually. We care for truth, and we can end the self-inflicted suffering that we've created for ourselves. So thank you for your time and attention. My name is Kris Nelson. My site is evolveconsciousness.org, and a special thanks to Mark Passio, without which I would likely not be here, and I'm sure many of us presenting today at the S.E.E.D 5 Metamorphosis conference would also not be in the positions we are in right now regarding our knowledge and our capacities. So special thanks to Mark Passio and of course the S.E.E.D team. Thank you very much for inviting me to this conference. I am deeply honored to be here. Thank you very much. And my next thanks is to all the teachers of the Great Work Network that Mark Passio started, where many of the people in this conference, especially the organizers, Brandon Martin, Nate Cap, are part of. You can find them at Seed Truth and the Cubbyhole, the One Great Work, seedtruth.com. You can find all the One Great Work content creators at onegreatworknetwork.com, and of course Mark Passio is whatonearthishappening.com or woeih.com. So thank you very much for your time and attention. Peace.